Hello, friend. Welcome, everyone, to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Mr. Robot Season 4, Episode 4. It's called 404 Not Found. Probably the most famous of the error messages.
The error codes, yeah.
We're all familiar. In fact, it makes me think all the way back to Season 1 episode, I think it was 4, Season 1 actually, the Dream episode, where he actually finds a 404 sign where his house is supposed to be. But yeah, so this episode is gotten quite the reaction online for being weird.
I don't think it was any weirder than some of the other episodes we've had.
I've seen a reaction online for it being a bit weirder. It does lean a certain way. That's not like most episodes, but I think there's gems to be found in here, and I think there's a very strong theme which I think is important to the overall themes of this season and the overall themes of the show, especially in regards to White Rose. So we'll be diving in. Cara wasn't here last week, obviously. I mean, in about 30 seconds. Did you like last week's episode?
Yes. Sorry, I watched them both back to back, so I'm having a little bit of trouble distinguishing which was which exactly off the top of my head. It'll be fine as we go through it because you've got your notes. You'll talk, oh, it's this scene, and I'll know the scene, but they're kind of blurred in my head at the moment.
That surprises me because they're very distinct episodes.
They are, but I literally sat down and watched them just straight through about 10 hours ago now.
All right. We shall get going. We shall start with the van, because obviously last episode ended with the listening, and the camera goes out and the van's there, and someone presumably from the Dark Army is listening on them. Although last week I wasn't necessarily convinced it was the Dark Army. I was speculating that there could be a number, maybe possibilities.
That makes sense.
Because it was speculation on their part. Elliot kind of jumped to that conclusion.
He was very convinced immediately, wasn't he?
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like he was right, but I mean, I think there was a possibility. But we actually just hear the other side of this from the van's perspective. The van, the guy in the van. We hear the audio being recorded. We hear Tyrell say, "Oh, we can finally take down White Rose," and what's interesting though is the conversation.
Trying to shut him up.
The conversation goes further, and we hear kind of them bluffing. It's like, "Oh, I was trying to install something. Oh, the hard drive was full. Oh, I'll try." And it's just babble whilst they're doing something. While Elliot's doing something, eventually he sends like some feedback loop or whatever to the guy sitting in the van.
It all cuts out. Yeah.
They're just sort of killing time and try to distract him. So obviously, when the guy opens the van door, Tyrell hits him with a hammer, square in the head. Interestingly, I noted down the audio software he was using to record this surveillance was Audacity. I recognized the software, which I thought was funny. Not as something that we use often. I typically just use it to convert the audio files I get out of the editing software into MP3s for the audio feeds. But
as an audio nerd, someone who's done a lot of this, I do this in a lot of TV shows and movies. I'll spot, they're using that software. It'll just be on the screen in the background most of the time, and I'll find myself going, "Oh, okay."
I notice video software a lot, typically, because there's only really 3 or 4 video editing software packages that people use.
To be honest, in terms of the music ones, there's only 3 or 4 good ones that people use really anyway.
Yeah, but Audacity is a funny one to me because it's a free thing that everyone just it tends to be the thing that people just grab and use because it's there. It's just reliable and it's
it
free.
Works. Yeah.
So it gave me a chuckle. So interestingly here, there's a transition to the next scene. We get the title screen coming up. Obviously it's like, okay, we have to try and scrub the van, delete the drives, hope that he didn't send out the hopefully it wasn't being broadcast back to the Dark Army live. Maybe this is something they've intercepted. And the guy does look like he's dead. Even especially when I was watching it the second time, he's breathing at first and he kind of stops. It does genuinely look like he dies. As Tyrell's looking at him. Which is important for later. So the camera goes up, and they're going to go and deal with the van or whatever. And the camera goes up. We have this sort of almost Christmassy, kind of dark, not super dark yet though, because there's a really dark Christmas jingle later. But
Yeah, it's getting more Christmassy as it goes on. In terms of the music.
Well, it's still Christmas Eve at this point. Obviously, by the time we ended the episode, it's after midnight, so we're in Christmas. But the camera goes up to the sky. The title comes up, Mr. Robot, blah, blah, and it comes back down onto another street. So interesting here, again, from the theme of the episode, we go from street to street. And in this case, it's Darlene who's here, and she's making a phone call. So I'm going to kind of present my thesis for this episode at this point, because I'm going to have to talk about this as I go with all the scenes. And it was becoming... Now, I saw someone mention something about this theme online. My second viewing of this, I was really kind of like paying attention for it, but it all kind of clicked together. This episode is about alternate timelines or alternate realities. And not literally. I'm not saying there's literally alternate realities. I don't think I'm going down the deep end.
We're not going down there yet.
Everything that happens in this episode happens twice with different versions. Everything. There's this transition here, we go down to another street here, but we have the driver being dead and not dead, we have the van being outside and not being outside, they come in and talk to the woman at in the gas station twice, and have different conversations. We have getting lost, there's talks of forks in the path, there's literally... There's two cars. There's literally two versions of realities, and not in a literal sense, but for a long time in the episode, we believe that this Santa Tobias has one story, and then it turns out his story is completely a different thing. It's two alternate paths.
This might make me like Dom's stuff a little bit more.
Dom's stuff, it's two things. It's about a chunk of it turns out to be a dream, but there was two things. We believed it was one thing, and it turns out no, it's another thing. It runs throughout the entire thing, every single thing. I was noticing just doubles and twos and two alternates the entire time, and it's got me convinced. Put my pad down, make a statement here. White Rose, it's not about travelling back in time, it's about finding a version of reality where her boyfriend is still alive.
Stands to reason. I think we've spoken a lot about how duality has been a big theme of the show in general. Elliot and Mr. Robot, White Rose and Zhang.
Oh yeah, even down to the fact that Dom pretends to be someone different online. The idea that Elliot has Mr. Robot. The idea that even Tyrell in this episode pretends to be someone else for a brief moment. All these different
duality has
things.
been a big theme across the whole show. So I mean, it makes sense if that's kind of the point.
But this episode, I think, repeatedly does this. It does, here's the one version of this moment or scene, or what we believe this character to be, and then here's the opposite. And I'm not saying there's literally alternate realities going on there, although the ending certainly raises some questions. We'll get there when we get there. But I'm presenting this now because I feel like as I'm going through this, I'm going to have to constantly say this is where like one version is, and then a flip happens, or here's where this theme comes back up again. So we shall continue on, but the camera comes back down to Darlene, and she's in the and again here she leaves one phone message, and she changes her mind. And but not only that, there's a couple of really harsh cuts here. There's a harsh cut in the music because the music that's playing as the camera comes down just cuts off as soon as she starts talking. It's a harsh cut, very abrupt. And then at the end of her like rant on the phone when she's leaving this message, and she's like, "F you! I hope you kill yourself." All that stuff. Like she's very, very extreme, very upset. And it's a harsh cut to her just sitting there on the pavement. And again, just the filming style, when she's walking around, pacing around on the street, making this really harsh phone call, the camera, she's constantly moving, but the camera's also constantly moving. It's it's following her, but it's also not just keeping in time with her. It's kind of rocking back and forth. It's going up and down a little bit. It's a lot of movement in it. And then it cuts to her sitting on the pavement, and she's just sitting there still for the second. And obviously we don't get to hear this version of it. We see her start to make the call.
But we know there is a second version.
Yes, and she seems to be calm. Everything about her body language, the camera moving, everything's telling us this is a calm take.
It doesn't sound like she's going to explode again.
So she literally, and obviously this is just a real world thing, but she literally did one thing and then chose to go back and erase it and do it again, do a better version. So again, really setting up the theme of the episode, and it's something that happens throughout. Then we go to Dom, and again, interesting transition here where it cuts from Darlene to Darlene, because Darlene, footage of her interrogation is on Dom's laptop, and Dom is masturbating whilst watching this footage. So whilst Dom does have a lot of pent up feelings about Darlene, clearly there's still a raw attraction that she's not been able to kind of
Very inappropriate as well.
overcome. Inappropriate?
I mean, yeah, you interrogation footage from work.
Yeah. No, it
I mean,
is.
come on.
I mean, yeah. It's one. It's weird though, because it's like, assuming she's allowed to have that footage on her private laptop, right, and take home. At that point, it's like, well, whatever she does with that at home,
I mean,
her business.
sure.
This only feels weird because we're getting to see it.
I don't know. I think it's still weird if anyone did that, even if I wasn't seeing it. I think it's just a bit weird.
Connor, by being on the internet, you're accepting that some weirdo out there might be masturbating watching you speak right now. You just have to accept it. And I know
Sure.
I know some of you are doing it, right? I know. I know you're doing it at home.
You say all this.
Right. You, at home right now, you holding your penis or flipping your bird. Whatever one of you is doing. I know you're doing it.
Do you know the key distinction here
Yes.
between what you've just said and what I'm saying is I am voluntarily on the internet here.
Sure.
Darlene is just being filmed in an interrogation room. She hasn't got any choice in that.
That is fair. That is fair. But she's all just basically just sitting there, mumbling to herself. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not like a snuff film or like a pervy hidden camera. She does know she's being filmed, right? She knows she's been under surveillance at that point.
She does, but it's not by choice, really, is it?
I guess like. Is it any different, I suppose, to someone using like a paparazzi photograph for spank bank material?
A little.
You know?
In the sense that those are, argue about the morality all you want, but they are published. People can see them. Anyone can just see them online or in whatever magazine they're in. This is... Okay, this is. I'm gonna take this from work and use this for myself. It's just an extra level of weird.
I guess I just kind of fall under no harm, no foul. Like she's never gonna know, right? Like this is.
Maybe she won't, but it's so weird.
It's like you really shouldn't have a fantasy about your teacher, for example. But what you're thinking about when you're knocking one out is really your business, and no one's ever going to know.
I mean, sure, but you're probably not watching a video of your teacher, are you?
Well, probably not. Probably not. Yeah, but I mean, she does know she was filmed, which I think for me is a key difference here. It's not like it's some camera behind a corner spying on her.
I'll give you that. It could have been worse.
I can't believe we went into the morality of Dom knocking one out to some security footage.
It's like the least important thing in anything of this episode.
I know. What's interesting about this, though, is that it actually does harken back. If you remember Dom's introduction back in season 2, one of the first scenes she had, either in the first or second episode, she was masturbating, and she was using like Alexa to help her. So there's actually kind of a nice little character callback here.
Sure.
With that. So, yes. So she kind of gives up though. She's not feeling it, for lack of a better phrase. And she opens up her laptop and she goes to some chat rooms, and she goes to a sex chat room, and she starts talking to someone who's clearly spoken to her before on here. Happy Hard On Henry 806. The name may not be important, but I know I did down just in case.
It was important in the sense that this is immediately clear it's a guy.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't think the name's that important when the first thing he says is, "Do you still like thick dick?"
Okay, sure, but even before that pops up, you see the name and go, "Hang on, this is a guy."
I think the thick dick got it across. So
I mean, it did afterwards. I'm just saying, I was already there.
But again, this idea that she's leading a double life, she's pretending to be a straight person on this chat room for whatever reason. Like, does she get a kick out of? Maybe it's just because there's a lot of guys on there. It's easier to find some horny guy to talk dirty because
I think it probably just goes back to you mentioned one of our earlier scenes with the Alexa, and I remember distinctly talking about her loneliness.
Yeah,
it probably just comes back down to that.
Yeah. So again, it's this double life. It's this two versions of herself, which obviously ties into Ellie. It ties into everything, and it makes me interested actually because we're talking about the possibility of this third personality, right? Is this idea that there's always been two choices, and even later in this episode, Elliot and Tyrell are told us that there's a fork in the road. Make sure you go left at the fork at the creek or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I can't help but feel the third option, this like mystery third option, is kind of like, is this how you get out of the no win situation, or is this how you get out of whatever we're going to be in, right?
It's one of those things where it kind of blows the rules of the show out the wall. We obviously spoke about that. The idea of, oh, hang on, introducing a third thing is game changing already. But in the context of the duality being the theme of the show, it really throws a wrench in just how the end game is perceived.
Yeah, but it makes a lot of sense though that if the whole show's been a bit jolly, the idea that the ending might be, hey, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be
it's
just
not
A
a
and
binary
B.
choice.
Yeah. There's more to it than that, and hell, even using that word binary, like he's a hacker. We're talking about computers like for seasons here. Good word juice. So so we come from there. To Darlene, who's in Elliot's apartment. She said she was going to go there, and she just sees the note saying they're listening. That makes her worried. She looks up her phone app because we established before in episode 2 that she'd connected an app or whatever on their phone so they could find each other, and she wants to get there. So
I feel like this app is going to come back to really, kick them up the ass, because if the wrong person gets into that.
Yeah, possibly. But nice transition. There's a lot of transitions in this episode that really stuck out to me, because here it fades from looking at the map on the phone, the GPS, to the actual like location on the road, like the gas station with the fork. Again, very sort of bird's eye kind of view. So they're at the station. They're just Tyrell's getting gas, and he's like, yeah, we're basically going to burn the van and the body and whatever. Go pay for the gas and get a lighter.
That'll solve the problem.
Yeah. But they go in, and very typical pair of shots here. One looking at the lady, the cashier, and one looking at them, who, I think Elliot's up front and the other two are sort of out of focus, but they kind of switch around as need be, because Tyrell needs to pay because he's the only one with cash, and because the internet's down.
Because the internet's down, which also affects the phone lines and everything here.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't affect my internet, or my phone rather, if the internet went down, but I can totally buy that there's certain areas now that probably do.
Oh, no, I agree. It wasn't like I'm doubting the plausibility of this. It never even occurred to me as a possibility, because everywhere I am familiar with, the phone lines, the internet are just separate now.
Yeah, well, I guess, I almost see it though as it's not so much that everywhere else is separate now, it's that separate is the default, but I totally buy that some rural communities, because they mention this is the middle of nowhere, that it's not so much that it's reverted back to what it used to be, it's actually kind of the opposite. It stopped being relying on the phone lines, and now they use the internet, which is not the phone lines anymore, as a source to use the communication. It's like a
possibly
bypass. Because maybe the weather here made it too difficult to maintain the phone line, so this was like an easy way out for the area or something like that. Like,
could have been, yeah.
I could totally buy it. It's the same way that a lot of people don't even use, like, internet doesn't affect your TV, like cable or satellite broadcast, but so many people now have given up that and just use the internet. So now, I think it's the same thing as that. Like, some areas might just use.
Could possibly. I don't know well enough.
That's what I got from it anyway. And even in 2015, much as I said, that still sounds quite plausible.
Sure, yeah.
So they go outside though. Well, actually, first of all, the lady recognizes Tyrell, but doesn't quite place him. She's like, "Oh, you look familiar."
Yes.
You.
And he pretends to be. He's like, "Yeah, sure, I was on Big Brother," but again, two personalities.
Pretending to be someone, yeah. Also. Just there's this frustration because she keeps like sort of like clinging to her. I recognize you, rather than just ringing them up and like getting on with it and letting them leave.
Elliot's getting frustrated.
Yeah. The guy outside though, and the van's gone. So this idea, we assumed he was dead, and I think Elliot even says like, "Where did you move the van?" He's like, "I didn't move the van," and it really brings into question kind of the logistics of the last few minutes, because when Tyrell said to them, "Go inside and pay for the gas," and that, when we cut inside, Tyrell's just with them, so. And it didn't feel that weird to me at the time, but then they come out and the van's gone.
Yeah, you just figured he followed him in at some point, right?
Yeah, but there's just a weird kind of disjointed feeling. Honestly, this whole episode has kind of a weird, I wouldn't say dreamlike, but there's kind of a weird tone to it.
Okay, sure.
I don't like quite say ominous. That's not quite the right word, but there's like I don't know.
It's a bit off kilter. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was noticing. I think it was probably in the previous episode that they're playing it, even by this show standards, fast and loose with the independence of Mr. Robot and Elliot.
Oh, we'll get to that later. I've got a big example later, but
Okay, I'll wait then, and we'll
because
discuss it there.
for the most part, it's been kind of explainable. There's always been that thing where if both of them are doing something, because the last episode they were both searching the apartment in different places and they were both finding things.
And we've seen that in the past, and I've kind of just gone, well, we're not quite seeing the time right as it is. It was when they were doing the laptops so separately that it was a bit odd in that episode. That was an extreme case of that.
I'm okay with that because I feel like, again, this is all just him anyway. No one else is here. You can kind of explain that with whatever. I mean, thematically there might be a point to show it being more separate, but I don't think there's any problems with that. Although, did you see his tweet, Esmail's tweet regarding this scene? That scene where they were...
I did not know.
No, I mentioned this in the last week's review, but I'll repeat it again.
I had to avoid anything, knowing I wasn't going to watch the episode for a week. I was just anything that looked anything Mr. Robot was just scrolled immediately past.
So some guy named Evan tweeted at Sam Esmail saying, "Well, Sam's a dumb name too," and Esmail just quote tweeted that saying, "Classic Evan."
Just a little side note. That's even funnier right now because if you follow British politics, classic Dom is a big thing right now. So it has all these extra connotations for me at the minute.
Very good. So yeah, but okay. So the idea that the van's there, it's not there. Again, two alternate realities kind of thing. So then we're actually with Darlene. There's a lot more cutting back and forth in this episode, I noticed. They really made a point of cutting through because normally Mr. Robot likes to have big long scenes that are kind of uninterrupted and big long chunks. This episode was a lot more back and forth between the three plots.
Yeah. I was noticing that as I was watching it as well.
Darlene is hacking into a car. She's sort of, she's hooked up the lock and she's like hacking in because, cars have smart cars exist now and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And she's attacking in, and then someone kind of like goes, "Hey, what you doing?" Like someone's like spotting her, and seems like it's his car, and it's again a Santa suit who we find out is called Tobias.
Very, very drunk man.
Very drunk, yes. I love this actor. I think his delivery of every line was perfect.
Yeah, I feel like I know him from something, but I forgot to look him up.
Yes, it was hard to tell because obviously you can only see the center of his face because he's got the hat and the beard.
His voice, though, very familiar sounding.
Everything he said, like as soon as he sauntered in, I already got what this was going to be. To a point, like I didn't predict like what exactly I was going to do, but I already got as soon as he walked in, I'm going to be like, this is going to be an emotional sort of like thing for Darlene. Like by the end of wherever we end with this plot with him, she's going to have kind of like got in touch with her feelings by the end. Like I just got this was going to be some sort of Christmas, like he's going to reveal things about herself.
Yeah, and she gets the super Christmassy theme in this episode.
Yeah, I guess but later on he even brings up It's a Wonderful Life. It very much feels like this is, he's not our guardian angel, but there's kind of a feeling of,
I'll give you
that kind of thing. So we have that, and basically he is like, "Where's my?" Because at first she's like, "You have to call the cops. You caught me. I'm leaving. I'm no harm, no foul." And he's like, "No. I've got questions." And she's like, It's like, "Have you found my keys?" And she's like, "No. Actually, that was my only question. So actually, no. I've got a second question. Can you start my car?" And she's like, "Are you serious? You can't drive like this. You're wrecked. What are you doing?" And then Darlene gets the idea. Although there was one line that stuck out to me where he says, "Cabs won't go where I'm going." And she cracks a joke about the North Pole. But again, I kind of like, if we're talking about parallel realities and parallel timelines, I don't know. It almost makes me think of Back to the Future when Marty asked him in the first movie. He said, and Doc's explaining the 80 miles per hour thing, and he's like, or even at the end when he says, "Where we're going, we don't need roads," or that kind of stuff. It reminds me of those things. But so basically she suggests, "Hey, how about I drive you home, and then
I'll borrow your car.
I'll borrow your car briefly since we're friends." He's like, "Yeah, I like that. Let's go." On the road. So that sets up kind of her main part of the plot of this episode, because she's trying to get to Elliot basically, but she has to do this first. And that's kind of her set off on her way.
She has to go on a quest before she can, just get to Elliot. That's how these things work. Especially
and we cut back to the gas station, and the shots are the same as before. It's the exact same shot as the cashier. It's the exact same shot looking at the other three. and they're asking for like, oh, like where's the nearest town? Where can we get to? She's like, oh well, you can't really walk unless you go through the shortcut. And immediately I'm thinking, well, yeah, tell us what the shortcut is. Like,
Yeah.
It's like, hey, but my husband's going to be here in like an hour or so. I mean, we could drive you. And of course, this idea of the two versions of things happening. This time they're back in here, and the woman does recognize Tyrell. Goes, I know who you are. You're Tyrell, and he tries to deny it, of course. But you know, she understands who it is. She gets him. It's almost like if this was literally like an alternate timelines kind of show. It's like, no, version 1, she doesn't understand who he is, or she doesn't quite get it. Version 2, she does recognize him. She does get him, and I like that.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, no, I get that. It's pretty distinct, this episode in that sense with the duality.
Yeah, but yeah, she says, "Be sure you veer left at the creek." Is the line of dialogue she has. Obviously, at one point, Elliot and Mr. Robot do get very, very upset. If it's Mr. Robot who leans in and like yells at her, and you know, and she eventually gives him.
A little bit terrified.
Yeah, you can learn some manners while you're walking, kind of thing, and you know. They saunter off into the forest, where they spend much of the rest of the episode, and a lot of this is beautifully shot, might I add. There's a lot of really nice, pretty
especially
shots.
The later it gets, some of the stuff with the lights, in against the trees is gorgeous.
Yeah. There's a big wide shot later. I'll point it out when we get to the scene specifically.
Oh yeah, I think I know the ones you're on about already.
Yeah, so. We cut back again. Again, it's going back and forth. We cut back to Dom, who, it's worth mentioning, but in the previous scene, she was kind of dozing off at the end of the scene. And at the start of this scene, she kind of wakes up and sees there's a few more messages. And she types in saying, hey, sorry, I'm falling asleep. Like, I'm just going to go. Which stands to reason. Now, admittedly, they've set it up that she was tired and she was kind of dozing off. So, I mean, the whole she was dreaming thing doesn't feel that cheap later, because it's very heavily kind of...
It still feels a little bit cheap to me personally. I'm giving it a bit more of a pass now, thinking of it through the lens of the duality. But even when I was watching it, it did bother me a bit.
It never bothered me because I saw it. I don't want to say I saw it coming necessarily. But I did actually. See, as soon as Henry admits that she's a woman, as soon as that it felt too like, this is too perfect. This is
no. I agree. My problem is that I feel like, for being the dream sequence, you know, once you get to that point, I feel like it goes on too long, for to be as satisfying as it could be. Like, it feels a little unsatisfying, because even though you know it's okay, this is probably a dream sequence now, it just goes on too long under that pretense that it bothered me a bit.
It never did me, but basically Henry wants to meet up, and sort of, you know, reveals who she is, and Dom's like, okay, why don't you come round and we'll be alone together.
I'll tell you what, the biggest giveaway that this is a dream, even if you go, okay, sure, it could be a woman, the biggest giveaway is Dom's just like, yeah, sure, here's my address. Given, you know, she's just spent all the time at her mother's, utterly afraid to leave her room, and doesn't want to see anyone because, hey, she's thinking every single person might be Dark Army. Yeah, no, I ain't buying this for a second.
I don't know. Horniness overcomes many a thing, many an inhibitor. But yes, so we cut back to the forest, and the three of them are walking through. At one point, I think Elliot asks, like, "Are you sure you've got the right trail?" And Tyrell says there was only one. This was the only one.
Yeah, I took that to mean before they turned off at the creek, right? So
yeah. No, that's exactly what it means, because they're not at the creek yet. They mentioned that in the scene. But again, this idea of there only being one perceived path, with one fork kind of thing, it just really stuck out to me, that line. But Tyrell talks about how he kind of dreams of running away and like having a peaceful life, and how he wants this all to be over.
He wants to be back on the farm.
Yes, and there's a howl that happens. This really awkward sounding howl. That sort of debating, is that a dog? Is it a coyote? What is this? It does sound kind of weird.
Yeah, I think howl is being generous. It's more of a whine.
Well, the subtitle said howl, so I'm going with howl.
Yeah, sketchy subtitle.
Like, Amazon said howl. I'm just going to go with howl for lack of a better term. Okay.
Okay, fine.
But I agree as a wine because we kind of get a hint of what it was later, but I'm going to say Hill because that's what I've written down in my notes. So I'm not going to second guess myself every time
You
I
are
go to.
so inflexible. You can't
Well,
change that on the fly.
yeah, the way I have to think about it every single time. Every single time my pad almost like it went kind of floppy and almost fell in my hand. So someone's going to take that out of context and make it a funny sound. But so they're in the forest, and this is where you get the big beautiful shot where it cuts to this wide shot, and it's just the silhouette of them in the trees, and it's this all it's big tall trees, the moonlight's coming through, there's the mist, very very pretty stuff. This is where they're sort of worried that there's something near them because they hear this sound. But Tyrell gets worried because hey, that cashier can ID me. And this is when sort of the ethereal music, which I noted down was very good, starts playing, and Mr. Robot narrates. This is the first time he's narrated all episode, and he's talking about searching for something but not finding it, and it kind of it cuts to Darlene. I think at the end of this this idea of looking for something, and this is where again I was starting to think about White Rose. This idea that whatever White Rose is doing, it's to find something that can't be found. And it made me think of the flashbacks last week. It made me think of, what she's really looking for.
Yeah, it's become fairly clear what her aim is, if not the specifics of how we're now leaning towards alternate universe dimensions as opposed to time travel. Sure, but it's fairly clear her objective.
Well, you say very clear. I wouldn't put my stake on it that much and say it's very clear.
I mean, the show wants us to feel that it's very clear.
Yeah, I think saying definitively no, it's definitely some big sci-fi idea where she thinks she can, do something like this with this device. Like, I'm not willing to put my stake in that and say it's definitely something that extreme.
No. I was saying in some form, she wants her partner back. And then maybe that's replacing him with something else and that's what this project is. But that's what it's all about. It's not just necessarily sci-fi. I'm not committing to that.
All right. So we do cut to Darlene, and she's in the car with Tobias, the Santa, who starts talking about Jimmy. Starts talking about his friend Jimmy, who basically describes him as suicidal and depressed, and talking about, you're out in the winter nights, you're looking up and thinking maybe the world would be better without me, and Darlene's looking kind of concerned. It sounds very kind of, and it kind of ties into because we've had themes of suicide recently with Elliot, just with Olivia last episode. It's been kind of a running thing recently, this idea of just escaping, and it does also make me wonder just how much of the show really is just about the idea of dealing with mental health and dealing with thoughts like that, and finding something to live for. Because so much, even going all the way back to season 1, so much of Elliot's story was finding something to fight for in place of what happened to his father. This ever since then, he needs something to sort of work towards.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So, I just noticed as well that this scene kind of ends. I think it both starts and ends with that sort of I'm going to call it a David Lynch shot, where the camera's kind of just on the hood of the car, it's sort of looking out at the road. So it's this kind of just.
Okay, I know the shot you're on about.
Yeah, it's just sort of this like. Very kind of like what's the word I'm looking for here? Not methodical, but like there's a very just kind of
it's trance-like,
yeah, sort of image of the road just speeding underneath the camera.
It basically is the shot that we had for about a third of Twin Peaks: The Return.
So it starts and ends with that. We come back to the forest. Tyrell thinks he understands Elliot. He's like, I get it now. You don't care about anything. The black hoodie, you always wear the same clothes. I care. I wear a suit and tie. $6,000.
Mentioning the hoodie there reminds me of what was probably my favorite moment of the last episode that I just want to mention. I'm sure you mentioned it last week anyway, but it was we spoke a lot in the past how the hoodie's kind of like his superhero outfit, kind of okay, this is the costume. And it was when he got back to his apartment and he's seen that, okay, no, it's been broken into. And the narration, or maybe he's done to Mr. Robot. He says, I'm just going to have to, pretend to be a normal person that I'm, like I'm scared to come in. And it takes down the hoodie, to shift back to that other persona of being normal. I thought that was a great moment.
I never actually mentioned that, so no, very good.
Yeah. surprised. I thought you would have.
Look, I spoke for 50 minutes on my own. I did it at one point that you thought of. I'm so sorry.
Oh, you should have done better. He's slacking.
Bite me. So yeah, and so he's basically like, yeah, you care, I care and you don't. Basically, is Tyrell's thing, and that basically means
it's very superficial caring, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's kind of this, like, again, this idea of duality. Not that I'm suggesting Tyrell's the other personality. I'm not suggesting that for a second, because that would be ridiculous. There's too many things that don't add up. But what I'm saying is, thematically here, again, with the theme of the episode, we're talking about how Tyrell's someone who cares about material things. Elliot is someone who does not. Tyrell cares about success. Elliot does not. And Tyrell sees that as why he has ultimately been a failure, and why Elliot is ultimately, in his eyes, had some amount of success. And again, it's this idea that if let's say that we are the same person to begin with, this idea that one cares, one doesn't, and this is just how different their lives are because of that.
Yeah.
Right from the get-go. So again, the theme keeps coming back. But they hear a car at one point, and they're like, shit, we're near a road, great, right, we can get back. And they run out, the car just drives past them, and I actually almost thought it was going to be Darlene in the car at one point. Just
so did I, yeah.
Because we knew she was sort of on kind of that way, because I got I got the impression that when she agreed to go upstate, it's because she knew the area she had to go to was kind of in that sort of direction.
Yeah, it wasn't like so far out of her way.
Yeah, but of course they find that they've actually went back in a circle and they're back at the gas station again. This idea of coming back, and again, duality. We're repeating things. We're back at the station, and it also means they probably took a right at the fork.
I mean, not necessarily.
Well, then they left. And then...
Well, no, but I mean, I'm just saying if they did and then just carry and veered left again at some point without realizing.
Oh yeah,
they weren't on a path at that point, were they?
Well, no, but I think there was like a general like clearing, right? So I'm assuming that like you don't necessarily have to think about the direction. You just go straight until you get to the creek, and then you take a left and just follow whatever the.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that it felt like maybe they thought they were going straight, but they weren't. Maybe they were actually leaning just left and just. Yeah, it could have been right as well. It doesn't really matter. My point is, okay, without realizing they leant too far in one direction.
Yeah, in a logical sense, but this is boring as far as talking about the theme of the episode goes. Clearly, like we were given this option of don't veer left at the creek.
Look, but I think what's interesting here is I don't think they made a choice. I think that's what's for me is more interesting here. I don't think it's that they made the wrong choice. It's that they were kind of wandering aimlessly and didn't actually reach their destination because they didn't make a decision at all.
Okay. So then we cut to the car again with Darlene. Tobias. It turns out he volunteers every Christmas Eve at a kids' cancer center. And Darlene's kind of suitably impressed. Like, that's kind of cool.
And goes out and gets hammered after.
He gets drunk after. But he says, "This might be the last year I do it, though. My wife used to go with me, but ever since the accident, and it sounds really, kind of almost like on the nose just how much of like a tragedy this guy's life sounds like. And he talks about how the kids are like, some of them are so small, it's almost as if they were born to die." And Darlene's like, "Oh, no wonder you're so like drunk. Like, how else would you get through that?" And like I say, he mentions the accident, and we see that he has pills in his pocket. So again, we're really painting this picture of this suicidal guy dressed as Santa on Christmas Eve, who's maybe lost his wife recently.
That's the implication we get here.
So it really paints this picture, and that's what the scene is. And then we cut back to Dom, and I'm pretty sure this is Irene from the Deuce who comes sauntering in.
I thought I recognised it.
And they make a bit of small talk. Again, Irene says she imagined Dom's place was different and more organised. Again, the idea of two versions, the real and the not so real. Sticking it in again. And again, I noted here, Dom says that that's the great thing about chat rooms is that everyone gets to like imagine what they want. They get to have complete control, and just as they say that, the song that's playing actually has the lyrics "Total Control." I think that's even the name of the song, but that's the lyric that happens right after she says that. But ultimately, she goes to the bathroom to sort of freshen up or whatever, and there's candles everywhere, as if it's like a romantic setting.
Yeah, it's like the implication had been obviously she'd planned this and would had made it all nice for when she came over.
Yeah, so the woman runs in though, and she's wearing a Dark Army style mask, and dunks Dom into the bathtub, which is full. And she's drowning her, and she's basically saying you have to accept that you'll never be free, that you'll never have control. And you know, a lot of this dream is about Dom wanting control over things and not, the idea that she's taking risks and wants control. That's why she uses a chat room. So her dream is also it's basically the idea that she can let that go. And
yeah, it's hey, you don't need to control everything.
Yes. And of course she wakes up, and for me, her waking up really worked for me, because partly just because of the way it was shot, because it felt such like a slice of life moment. It really felt like someone waking up after they'd dozed off for like 5 minutes.
It felt jarring, but also a bit drowsy.
Yeah, it felt very realistic. I mean, she sees that there was messages from this hard-on dude who probably is a guy. It's just
yeah, because it never got any further.
Yeah, he's just mad that she's not responding. But again,
yeah, and he's gone offline as well.
But again, two realities, two timelines, whatever you want to call it. So then we go back to Darlene, Tobias. They get to his house. I noted that it was very Christmassy, like more so than any other house in the street.
Overly Christmassy. I mean, extremely Christmassy.
Give him a break. He just wants to enjoy Christmas. But they arrive, and they notice that there's a car in the driveway that looks very similar to the car they're in. And she's like, "Hey, what's that?" And he's like, "Huh? Whose car is that?" That was going to be my question. Oh, I remember now. I didn't drive there. Kenny drove.
Do you know what's really bad? I'm terrible at remembering names. I knew it was Kenny for some stupid reason.
Yeah, and she's like, "Okay, so I have just stolen a random car then. This is not like yours. This is just some random person's car."
I mean, she can't feel too bad about it because she was going to steal the car anyway.
That's true, no, she was. But she didn't have to drive him here, though. She could have just avoided that part, potentially.
Yeah.
But, I mean, don't get me wrong, she did seem to become a little attached to him over the journey. But, so he says, one of the last thing he says before he leaves is goodbye is short and final, and that sounds really ominous, right? And, she gets out and she's like, "Hey, look, like, I know you're down, whatever, like, but you can't do this, you can't, think about hurting yourself, I don't want anything to happen to you." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And we get this reveal. She's like, "Well, you got the pills I ordered for my wife. Your wife is dead." And I'm like,
she's like, his reaction is like, he goes, "What happened to her?"
And then he's like, "No, she threw her back. That was the accident. We were putting up the Santa. She's in a lot of pain. The medication helps with the pain." And like, and she's like, "Oh, but Jimmy, this friend, she starts, that classic thing where you're talking about a friend when you're talking about yourself. It's like, Jimmy Stewart, It's a Wonderful Life. And to be fair, what he says about him in that movie does line up. And it's like, and again, it's this idea of we had this one version of him, which wasn't necessarily the real thing, but we thought it was, and it very much played it to us that this is what he was, and then it turned out, no, it's completely different. He's a different timeline, different version of the character.
I love how realistically drunk this guy is, because a lot of the times in TV movies, it's really overplayed and it's just ridiculous. Whereas this is, no, he was telling this story, and he was talking about the film, but he never said that. He never explicitly said he was talking about the film, because in his drunken brain, he just thought it was obvious and didn't think he needed to say it. And that's kind of really true to life. It felt much more real because of that.
But the beauty of it is that it works with this theme, and it really subverts our expectations, because we're with Darlene the entire time. We are thinking what she's thinking. And then he's like, "Hey, like, do you want to talk about what you're going through?" And she says no, but then she unloads. And again, there's a really good music that comes in here as she kind of just unleashes about how much she's lost everyone, her best friend, her parents. The only person she has left is her brother, and he's a bit of an asshole, but she can't help but care about him, and she's worried
he might be dead anyway.
Yeah, he may be dead. So she really unloads everything, and the music just sort of like comes to a sweet sort of like conclusion. And he goes, "Okay," and turns around and goes to walk in the house.
Kind of love this guy.
So she goes back to the car, and we come back to the forest, and the three of them are walking. They're kind of on a road now, but it's still kind of around forest sort of area. and they're walking down. Tyrell basically thinks they're doomed at this point. He's like, okay, the guy's been gone too long. He's contacted the rest of them. Like, they know what we've done.
Yeah, even when we get to this little town, they're going to be there waiting. We're screwed.
And then he gets really upset. He sort of stops. He's got a rock in his shoe, and he's like, "You don't care about me. You never cared about me. Admit it." And Elliot does kind of admit it here. And this is the big thing that I think I wanted to mention earlier, is that Tyrell talks to both Elliot and Mr. Robot in this scene, and it's very intentionally done so that he has to differentiate between them. Because when I was watching it the second, because I remember this being from the first time I watched it, of course, right? And then I watched it the second time taking notes, and I was paying close attention to where Tyrell was looking, and if you could sell it off as like, no, he's not really. You could explain this away. It makes sense on its own.
We've seen it before where he might turn his head a bit, but Mr. Robot and Elliot kind of move around to kind of.
Forgetting the movement. Forgetting any kind of movement. What happens here is that at first you can't explain it, because at first, Elliot gets mad at him and he walks off, and then Mr. Robot like kind of comes in and sits down next to him, right? So Mr. Robot is on his left, Elliot's far to his right. He's walked like 20-30 feet to the right. And he's talking to Mr. Robot. Mr. Robot's trying to kind of be nicer to him, basically. And, when Elliot first says something from the distance, Tyrell does turn his head in the direction of Elliot to a point. But it kind of plays like, oh, this could be when someone just looks away from the person as they talk to them. It kind of works to a point. However, when Elliot comes walking back towards him, Tyrell stands up, he keeps looking at him, and he actually follows his line of movement until he's in front of him. He's very clearly shifted from talking to Mr. Robot, who was sitting directly to his left, to Elliot, who was, quite a bit away on his right. The only thing I have to say
is, having only watched the ones and have to rewatch to check, when Mr. Robot is sat next to him, is Tyrell looking at him for that part of the conversation, or is he just staring ahead?
No, I think he looks at him. I'm sure he looks at him.
Okay, I'm gonna have to take your word on this.
And I don't think it's trying to say anything about who Tyrell is, or that Tyrell's seeing both of them. I think it's meant to be purely a thematic thing here.
I think it's Tyrell seeing both of them in the sense that he understands Elliot now, and it's not necessarily.
Well, I agree to a point. I don't think it's necessarily understands. I don't think he understands. Maybe to that extreme extent, but I think it's visually representative of the idea that he is much closer in sync with Elliot now. The idea that, like, that this veil of the because he's kind of idolized Elliot in the past. He's kind of been this thing at arm's length. This feels to me like we could do this with almost any character. We could do it with Darlene almost, to show that Elliot and Darlene are closer again. This idea that, like, it's just not that she's literally seeing two people, but her addressing both of them is almost like a visual way of representing that the characters fully become, like, I don't know, in sync, or
they're not aware of both personalities, but they understand Elliot and his mindset enough to.
That was how I was reading it.
Consciously differentiate between the personalities, even though they don't realize that.
That was how I was reading it, and he comes back over, and Elliot tells him, "F you, I don't care if you die," yada yada yada, and he walks off. But he does actually, when he's storming off, the narration from Mr. Robot comes back in. And it comes
just before I say, well, it's on Tyrell for one more second. And it's very notable that this conversation is very flip flop in terms of tone between Elliot and Mr. Robot, and Tyrell just kind of goes with it the entire time.
Oh sure, yeah. But he's storming off. The narration comes back in, and it gets about being lost, but he kind of shifts it to, okay, what about the ones who were lost, not the ones who are looking for the lost? What if the ones who were lost don't want to be found? And interestingly, it cuts to a shot of Darlene during this part of the narration. It doesn't go to a full scene of her. It's just one shot of her sitting in the car, and it comes back to these characters. And it's at this point where Elliot turns round, and he comes back and says, "All right, let's go. We have to keep fighting. We have to keep moving." And Tyrell's like, "But why? Why do we keep moving if we're already dead?" And he's like, "For my sister. Like she, I got her into this mess. I have to do this for her." So obviously the cut to Darlene's pretty obvious in the idea that he's thinking about her. But this idea of, like, it reinforced the idea to me that Elliot is probably completely and utterly screwed for the end of this show. I don't think he can have a happy ending, but he might be able to give Darlene one.
I agree. He even admits it to Tyrell a little bit later, where he's like, "Do you know what? I agree. We're dead already. We're just getting through this now. to get a message to Darlene, and I think that pretty much sums up the rest of the show.
Yeah, yeah. And again, Joe, I've said this in the last like 2 or 3 episodes, but I keep saying that, you know, Mr. Robot's had some really great emotional, like touching moments in the past, but I feel like this season feels really rampant with them. I feel like almost every episode is giving me like 2 or 3 scenes where I'm getting really kind of choked up and attached.
Yeah, had some big ones last episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
That were even by this show standards were really up there.
No, really good. So no, really, really good stuff. And he convinces Tyrell to go, because Tyrell even says, "Okay, well, let's go, and maybe you can make that phone call." Like this idea that Tyrell still fully believes they're screwed, but he at least sees now, okay, there's a reason to at least get so far. There's a reason to get to town to warn her, if nothing else. And it kind of humanizes him a lot, because Tyrell's a character who he brutally killed someone the first season just because he lost his temper. Like, he's not a clean individual who.
It's kind of crazy how sympathetic he is right now, and how much we kind of, relatively speaking, give a shit about him, given how terrible he was at the start.
And then let's not gloss over the idea, Darlene says she's lost everyone, so is he. Like, Tyrell lost his wife, lost his son. I mean, his son's not dead, but, like, he's lost him forever. And, like, he's lost his home. He even talks in this episode about wanting to go back to a farm and, like, to get away from this life. And, like, this idea that everyone around Elliot has kind of lost everything, and maybe that's why Elliot, instead of like being the way he is, should connect with them, because they can be, as Dom herself put it earlier on, they can be alone together. This idea of misfits finding each other and like making a new family or making a new support system, whatever.
Which it's interesting, because it's kind of for a while what we had with the F Society group. They were kind of his own little family, and then they all got screwed.
And and a lot of it was his fault.
Yep.
And when I say his fault, I'm including Mr. Robot in that. I'm including like the character as a whole,
directly and indirectly.
Yeah. So no, and this idea of making amends and wanting to make sure that he saves Darlene, this idea that he's lost Angela, he's lost everyone that's worked with him, is really quite something. It's like this idea of, okay, there's one person left that I can lose, and god damn it, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm making sure she gets out of this somehow. And it's kind of sweet, because we cut to stuff with Darlene in this episode, and she's talking about how Elliot is mean to her, or I mean, I don't know the word used, but she treats her horribly, doesn't seem to care about her, but she always cares about him. The idea that Elliot's kind of like has actually turned this corner, and everything he's thinking about is about trying to like save her, is a kind of a nice contrast, where we know he does care about her. She's maybe not seeing that yet, but we are seeing it, and it makes us really root for like her to find this out, but more importantly for him to succeed. So no, good character. The character stuff this season has been off the charts. I was gonna say off the rails. That's not what I meant. Off the charts.
It's been real good.
So yeah, and Elliot says to Tyrell at one point here, I don't like being an outsider either. I just wanted to point out that line. So yeah, and we do have one little moment with Darlene. We cut back, and Tobias comes up and chaps in the window and says, basically, I know you're worried about your brother, but you've got to worry about you too. Also, I hope he's not dead. Merry Christmas. And he goes home to his wife.
Yep.
Just a little bit. And the rest of them find the dead deer. They get to the road, they find this dead deer. Music's getting kind of eerie. This is the implication here, is that this is what the noise has been the whole time. It's been the squealing. This deer's dead now, but it's been maybe the squealing of this deer. That's the noise. That's why it's sounding kind of weird, because it was like a dying animal. It wasn't.
That's the assumption, yeah.
Yeah. And they go a little bit further up the road, and they see the van. The van is crashed into a tree. Went off the road and crashed. And they go up, and it's like, it's very tense, very slow, and I can only describe the music here as a dark Christmas jingle.
Yeah.
That's how I'd describe it. And again, talk about duality. Tyrell goes to the left of the van. Elliot and Mr. Robot go to the right, and they're going up the side of the van, and they sort of peek round. And even as something as simple as this little moment, Elliot looks in the van twice. He looks to the driver twice. First time, he's alive. Second time, we see him shoot himself like Dark Army do, but like the idea that the first time he's a threat and he's alive, the second time he's dead. Again, just doubles happening again, but this time different. And Of course, there's enough gunshots to maybe suspect, okay, maybe Tyrell on the other side's been hit, but
He definitely got shots off.
yeah,
We know that. It's just whether or not he's been hit is the question at that point.
yeah, and yeah, and there's stuff in here with Darlene driving as well to Elliot. It's kind of cutting between them quite a bit at this point. Again, feels very kind of almost Lynchian the way it's kind of going back and forth. She's crying. She stops at one point and just kind of breaks down and yells in the car. So, and I just noted down Dark Christmas music there. So my last little bit of notes, because obviously we're right at the end here. We have Tyrell, who has been shot, and Elliot's like, we have to get you to a hospital. And since you brought up the hood earlier, I will note down he takes his hood off here. And I noticed that really, because his hair's quite messy, when he pulls his hood off, it's really kind of all over the place.
It's, again, whenever the hood's off, it's a bit more vulnerable, a bit more real, I suppose.
Yeah, he's letting his guard down and sort of saying, hey, no, I'm here with you.
It's Elliot as opposed to Hackerman.
Yes, Hackerman.
Yeah.
But, Tyrell's like, no, just leave me. And he's like, I'm not going to leave you here to die. Again, it's this idea that if this is Tyrell's exit, and we'll talk about the fact that we might have had Angela and Tyrell both killed off in the first 4 episodes of the final season in a minute, but if this is Tyrell's exit, this idea that in this episode, Elliot did connect with him a little bit before. Like, he kind of at least respected him enough to understand, who he is, and he didn't want to leave him here. And he says, no, I'm just going for a walk. That's all it is. And we get this, again, it's this very almost cheesy, but it's kind of right in the context of what's happening. This shot of him just walking into the mist with a full moon.
I kind of wish it was the last shot. I wished it more before the talk, the repeated nature of this episode.
Yeah.
Because having a second exit scene essentially
makes sense, given the themes.
Kind of works in keeping with it. But before that, I kind of like the idea of this. It's just the end shot.
No, he just walks off into the mist, and it's this beautiful moment. And then we get a little montage with the music playing. With we see Dom sort of like get into the bathroom and just sort of like throwing some water in her face and like sort of contemplating. Darlene's kind of like crying still and just sort of like maybe about to start driving again. But we hear the howl again. Tyrell's walking through the forest, and we hear it again. And he's stumbling closer to something, because he's been shot in the stomach, so he's kind of holding his stomach and limping and, whatever. And as he gets closer to something, there's like a blue, purpley glow hitting him. There's something. Yeah. And he's kind of looking at it like, what the hell is this? And there's maybe like a little rumble kind of sound effect. Not a rumble, that's maybe not right. Just a hum, maybe a hum's better.
A hum's closer, yeah.
And he's looking, he gets really close, and it's a really strong purpley, bluey sort of light that's hitting his face. And and Joe, this definitely feels like it feels like finding like an alien artifact or something like that. It feels like he's found something that's right out of a science fiction movie.
It does, and it's played like Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, it's like Pulp Fiction, what's in the briefcase. It feels kind of like that. He's found something in the forest that is a purple blue glow to it, and it fades to white, and the credits play on a white background.
It's very unusual.
Yes, and it's very interesting because I think this episode is all about these alternate timelines. It's all about this idea of searching for the right one, and I think that's what Right Rose in a way, and even if it's not literally, in a way is trying to do with his device, or her device, sorry. So I then beg the question, like, so I think for people who, because I've seen online people calling this a filler episode, I've seen people online be disappointed with it, and honestly, I think if you really think about this, I think from a thematic point of view, I think this episode is very important for setting up what we should be thinking about for the rest of the season.
I agree with that. I had elements that maybe I didn't like as much when I was watching it, like this second Tyrell exit, the extended dream section with Dom, but they make a lot more sense in context thinking about it through that angle. So I like them more now than I did right after I finished watching it. Things like this ending, it makes me question, this final scene with Tyrell, is it even real? Because, okay, we hear that noise again, and like, but we've seen the dead deer. Is there another one? Is it, again, just that duality again? Or is this, was it never the deer in the first place? Was it something else?
Yeah. Was it always something else?
Or is this just not quite as real as it seems. Is this
And
representing something else entirely?
look at Tobias' story turns out to be, not real. Here's the reality that comes later. Dom's dreams, not reality. We get the reality later. So this deer could be the fake one. It could be the illusion, and then the reality. And again, but all the illusions we had were all reasonably believable. I mean, Dom's was a bit easier because it was a dream, but Darlene's was perfectly feasible and felt real enough until the rug get pulled, and it was like, here's
and
the
it's
reality.
same with that deer, that felt reasonable, but then maybe it's something else.
I did say, it's funny because we brought up Twin Peaks a couple of times. I do distinctly remember looking earlier today and seeing a couple of people saying, "Well, I guess we're in Twin Peaks territory now, just based on the ending," and yeah, I mean, it kind of feels like that, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it could be. The only other thing I would say is, it could be the noise that we hear at the end. That howl, as you've been calling it, isn't actually the same howl. It is more of a representation of, okay, no, that was the last noise that the deer made before it died, and this is kind of, now we're hearing it again, but it's for Tyrell this time.
Sure.
And that's it. This is his end.
Yes. And is this light just something he's seeing in his dying moment? It's not a real thing.
Yeah.
Or
I think it's possible, but I mean, it's slightly less exciting.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't. Honestly, if I was to put money on it, if I was to stake a claim and say this is my guess right now, I would say we will never see this light again, and it will never be brought up again. That would be my guess. And I think its importance is going to be more thematic and more about what it represents. Whether or not it's like, forgetting is it real? Is he just seeing it, or is there something really there? It may still be really there, but I still think the importance of it will be more of a thematic thing of what it means to the character and what it means, given where we end the show.
The bigger question here is, do you think that was the end of Tyrell? Like, was that his exit, or could we see? Because he's not dead at the end of this scene.
He's not, but a fade to white often does mean death.
It often does.
Not always, but
it's very him walking off is okay. I'm going off to die now. It's very clear that's the implication of what it wants us to believe.
Also, let's talk about the fact that, because we know what time it is roughly, actually, from Dom's text, because she gets a text from her mum saying,
it was like three something in the morning, I think.
It was almost 3. It was like 2:30. It was something.
Oh, okay.
But let's talk about what time of year it is. It is Christmas Eve going into Christmas Day. It is like 2:30 in the morning. So, given the mythology of Christmas, what's happening right now? Santa's going around the planet delivering presents, and you're probably thinking, what am I saying here? They find a dead deer on the road on Christmas night, or Christmas Eve night, like when, and that's the time, like the thematic implications that one of Santa's reindeer has plummeted to its death and hit this van. I can't ignore that, especially since the episode starts with the camera, as I say, going up into the sky and coming back down. I can't help but say that there's some imagery here, and we even have a Santa in the episode who Darlene guides home because he's lost his reindeer. Look. This all clicks together.
I'm sorry. I'm willing to go with the time travel. I'm willing to go with the alternate universes, but you've taken a step too far.
No, I'm not saying this is all literal. I'm saying that it's all just this thematic, wonderful thing that just all lines up. And what does Santa mean? He brings hope and he brings gifts. Was stopping this van a gift from Santa? Not that I'm suggesting Santa leant across and slit the deer's throat and plummeted it.
See, in this scenario now, Tobias is the real Santa. He wasn't really drunk.
And even that line he said about it's like they were just born to die. Like, there's almost a feeling you get like that with Elliot, and a lot of people around him. They're all just on a clock. Like, they're all just born into this, and they're just all screwed. Like, they have no choice. But I think a big theme of the show is, do they really have a choice? Can they really fight back? Are they at the mercy of the 1% of the 1% of White Rose or whoever's in charge? Yeah. And the idea that even White Rose, as we know, sure, it's super powerful, but even she is trying to achieve something and is essentially becoming God by playing God. And
yes, and it's a very personal goal as well.
But what's interesting, though, is that it comes from a place where she didn't have power. She wanted to be with the person she loved and couldn't because of the country they lived in, because of the lack of the power they had at the time. Obviously, she was just getting the job, or the Zhang persona was getting the job as the Minister of Defense or whatever. And she's risen up and taken power. You almost get this feeling that, in a weird way, White Rose is a representation of. I mean, we've talked in the past how there's a duality to Mr. Robot with Elliot to then White Rose with Zhang. The idea that the villain also has this kind of split. But I think even looking at this in this sense, this idea that in a way she was kind of an Elliot once upon a time and rose up, took the power, maybe not in the exact same way, but has become, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Like, there's things there.
And you could argue Zhang died as as the hero, and White Rose was born the villain.
If you look at it as it's really always White Rose now, and Zhang's just a disguise, sure. If you look at it that way, rather than there's actually both still functioning. But yeah, you could say that.
I think, given the flashback last time and that key pivotal moment, and then you see the White Roses, I think there's an argument to be made for that being the case.
Yeah, no, I could see it. Yes. How good was that shot though, with the camera came behind the roses and you saw the red side,
the blood
the hidden side, the hidden character, and the other. No, good.
No, it was good.
Anyway, so yeah, a lot of thematic stuff in here. I thought this episode was great. I think you're crazy if you don't think it's great. This was full of thematic and character touches. I love how much it's played into Christmas.
I'm really liking the music that it's doing.
Yep. All good stuff. And hey, and we still have, we didn't even get more of Vera this week. His hunt for Krista. I'm looking forward to that.
We didn't get too much last week. We got just enough to set it up, and that's it. We didn't get any more between Price and White Rose, and we know the meeting's going ahead, obviously, but.
Well, no, I was saying that last week as well. It's doing a good job of not feeling the need to do every single character subplot because there was no Dom last week either. No. So it's picking wisely when it's choosing, and I think this has been paced very well for me so far. Some people think it's slow. This for me, this is.
I don't think it's slow.
Yeah, it's hitting all the beats for me.
Methodical, I might give you.
Yeah.
Meticulous, because everything feels. This is what we're doing now. Everything feels important and why we're doing it as it is, and it's. I don't think slow is a fair word.
It's funny though, because there is a point where they're going around the forest for the first few minutes, and I'm like, are they going to be in the forest for the end of the till the end of the episode? And I sort of say that in my head almost negatively, thinking, "Oh, we waste half an episode.
How can this just be it?"
Yeah, but by the time I get to the end of the episode, and I'm looking at what the episode's doing, and I'm looking at what the point of the episode is, and the themes that it's bringing up, all of it kind of makes sense. The fact that Darlene spends most of the episode literally on a road, and we're talking about alternate paths, alternate timelines, they're in not quite a path, but in a clearing in a forest where it's hard to see which direction you're going in. There's a lot of thematic things here.
Yeah, where and to contrast that, she has no choice. It's just a straight road. She's just driving along it. It's again, some people have the choice, some don't. We saw that a lot in this show.
Yeah, or it's healthier because she can sort of see what the road actually is, where maybe you could see it as a representation that in Elliot's mind, there is no clear path. It's all just a mess of trees.
Yeah, maybe there should be there's a healthy middle ground where there's a road that you can see, but still make the decisions of which direction to take. Versus just it's one road and that's it. And as opposed to and Elliot's just like, well, hang on, we're just in the middle of the forest. Where the hell do we go? It's kind of two extremes.
Sam Esmail's a madman. I can't wait for episode 5. Let us know what you think of the episode in the comments. Like and subscribe. Ding the bell. Make sure you get the notifications on YouTube. You can support us by rating the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars. Helps people find us a bit more. You can also, of course, support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You can do that for as little as $1 per month and keep all the content coming and get some bonuses for your troubles. So go and see what's on offer. A whole bunch of things at different tiers. But that is us. So check out all the stuff we're doing. Me and Tara have been reviewing Watchmen. Episode 2 of that will be up probably about a day after this goes up. So look for that then, episode 2. You can also look for ongoing reviews of various Netflix shows. Some of them are audio only on the Netflix audio feed, but a few of them are on YouTube as well. So check out some of that stuff and check out the other stuff we do as well. We've got movie podcasts and comic book podcasts and all that stuff. So go and have a look-see. But that has been Mr. Robot, episode 4 of season 4. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. And I never did this last week, but I'll bring it back, because why not? Goodbye, friend.